Yeah, this is better, yes.
Right. So good morning to you all. We have the class for Facilitation skill and our instructor Ms Vandana Tyagi is here. Madam, good morning and welcome.
Thank you so much, sir.
Now I was just talking to these people and they are here, right? I will hand over you this Sudeep Jaiswal had gone. Now given the entry.
He must, yeah, I think he must be having an internet issue because he's coming and going.
Maybe, huh? So I make you host so that
Sure,
you
sir.
can
Sure.
do rest. Thank you, madam, and handing over to you.
Thank you, sir.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, ma'am.
How are we doing today?
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. So,
Great, great.
How is COVID situation back in your cities?
Not good.
Situations are scary, ma'am.
I know. It's scary
Very
for it.
dangerous situation.
True, true. In fact, I was just hearing the Trader Association, they were saying that we are okay, go for a 10 days lockdown. We are okay. I mean, we will manage.
Correct. Even now, every second home has some COVID patient.
True, true, true. I can believe that because I have had my share of COVID in the first run, wherein my husband got it, my son got it, and and the situation was really bad because we had to hospitalize him. It was not, and I've heard the second wave is more dangerous than the first one.
Correct, ma'am. I also gone through in the first COVID scenario, not only COVID, with post-COVID also. I also got admitted for 5 days. I was almost off from 2 months from my home, from my office, because after post-COVID, I was not able even to talk on phone. It's just like if phone is ringing now, that time I was like, "Kyun baj raha hai?" Please,
I can believe that.
Make it silent.
I can believe that.
So still that impact is there in the body, because if I do so much of work, I cannot exert myself very much, much. So I need rest after some hours.
I know. It's really tough. And I think the biggest challenge post-COVID was weakening. I mean, the ability to come back to your normal, it's much longer.
Correct. Even I recovered in the month of October, but still sometime I feel I'm not able, because work pressure after that is so much, and still it is there because now lockdown again, and we have to sit for session from 9:20 in the morning and sitting long lasting to 6:37. Sometimes I feel exhausted, not able to cope up with the things.
Yes. I think it'll take longer. You will be back to normal. It's just that you got to be eating well, you got to be exercising. I think it'll come back, but maybe the recovery time will expand to 6 months.
Recovery time is long.
Yeah, it's very long. So it will take you 6 months to a year's time. KK sir, I'm trying to share my screen, but somehow it still not made me the made me the host. KK sir, you there? I'm somehow not able to share my screen as yet.
It is showing Verma sir as host.
So he was talking about it, but he hasn't made me the host. Let me drop him a chat message. So while we are waiting for him to make us the host, we will still talk about what are the things we talked last. So in our last class, we talked about facilitation process. So in facilitation process, what are the things which will make you more effective in your facilitation skills? You all have experience, and you have all experienced that, sometimes the training becomes a drag for your participant, and sometimes participants are very happy and they are engaging, and they're even talking about that training to their peers. It's completely dependent on how are we carrying, even if you give the similar material or maybe similar texts and presentations and similar content to participants, they do a different level of, success. They go with a different level of success in that. So we talked about what are the different type of workshops we do. We do it around professional skills, wherein we teach interpersonal communication, presentation skill, or how people can be more assertive and credible, and how do they set up trust. We can also do it for strategic planning, where an organization is coming up with a vision statement. They want to, communicate this to their employees, or they're trying to bring in some kind of a change. So they want to probably, create that kind of acceptance or kind of willingness with their employees. So that's how they go for a training. It could be a personal development. It could be a team building exercise, because what happens that when people are engaging well with cross-cultural teams or across teams, they are very comfortable working with each other in any project. So the team building, in a way, help them to be, more comfortable, work with each other very successfully. So it has not the tangible benefit, but intangible benefit in long run in helping people be more comfortable with each other. We can have, we can teach people processes, techniques, and methods. We can have sessions around artistic or a creative skill. How can they be more innovative? So these are the areas around which we carry different level of facilitations. What are the principles of adult learning? How can you be more transformative in your learning? Because, adults they're looking for they want to apply the learning. So it's extremely important for them that what am I learning? And they decide when they want to learn, and they always bring the lens of their experience. And they're very cautious in terms of, along with their biases and assumptions, that what is it that they're willing to absorb. So bringing them to that level of insight and bringing in, connecting your content to the experience they already have is the key. So we talked about adult learning. How do you engage them? How can you be more, how can you connect? How can you be more psychological? So you're connecting the dots and connecting to their nod, wherein they're willing to listen to you. We also talked about, how can you be probably, what are the best practices? How should you be designing your workshop? What should be a guiding principle in terms of, deciding what kind of activities, what kind of exercises, case studies, and also what should be the duration of each one of them. Though on a fly, you probably change it as per the audience you have in the session. You might have to, bring in the change to your defined structure, but you do your audience analysis, and you design your workshop in a format that you're able to connect with people. We also talked about that how do we create that level of engagement? How do you actually break the session? What should be, there is a 20 minutes rule. So with every activity, when there is a monotony, you break that monotony, you bring people back to the participation. And you need to be sure of that, how many people are coming, what are the different level of experiences they have, and what kind of, profiles they work with. So it's extremely important that you're able to create that level of engagement within people when you know it first. You can also do some kind of things like design sprinting. We talked about a book which you can probably read, and you can use that wherein you let people engage, you let people brainstorm, you let people come up with a design activity and brainstorm together to come up with a result on their own to solve the problem. We also talked about that, how should you be practicing within the session. Most of the people think that they can talk about a behavior and it's the same as doing the behavior, but it's very different. Even if you spend 5 minutes practicing that particular behavior, it's very different and it'll reap a different level of results versus when you talk about the behavior. So you probably create that kind of, forced scenario within your workshop wherein you let people practice, you break them into trials so that everybody is getting to engage in the process. We also talked about the nuts and bolts of training. How should you be scheduling the training? How do you ensure that, people are comfortable in their mindset in terms of creating that level of, where should they read about the workshop? Where should they register? They also know about the logistic arrangement, as in if they are coming to an external place. You also take care of, things like the place is comfortable, the place doesn't have an extra sound from outside. You should know about the place. I mean, you should know the basic things like where are, in case you're going in an external facility, where are the fire exits? Where do you, who should you call in case you have audio video issues? Who should you be talking to in case there are medical exigencies in the team? So, because when you're standing out in the dais, you're the person who is looked at for all the answers. And the accountability you have is that people, you're the first person. So you're expected to have the basic information to guide them in the right direction. So you have a lot of responsibility when you stand there. So do these basic checks, reach to a place probably 30 minutes or an hour early. Do these all checks to understand that, yes, you are, you're on top of things. At least you know who should you be reaching out to or who should you be guiding people to. So these are basic things you should be careful about. And because you know that when you facilitate the session for adult learning, you have, you often will see that people will hijack your session. There are, maybe 20% of the people who are talking 80% of the time. Pareto principle apply there as well. So what you need to ensure that you're bringing people, you're first setting up the ground rules, you're bringing people back to the discussion, and you are ensuring that, everybody, you stay on the course, everybody get to participate, and you're able to achieve the goal which you had set up in the beginning. At the same time, you create an environment where people feel comfortable and the environment is risk-free, people are engaging, and people feel, it's a trustworthy environment. People are free to contribute and engage and learn in the process. We also talked about, take enough break, or probably create the signpost on the slide deck, and we are talking clock, help people understand that, you have 10 minutes to finish this activity, and this is what we will accomplish in that activity. So ensure that, you trim your certain sessions, certain part of the session if the objective. So probably what you can do is you can do an expectation setting start at the start of the session. If you believe that the people have expectations more on a practice on certain part of the training, then you probably spend more time there. You can always, seeing the engagement level of people, you can trim and expand your break. So give participation the place of choice. You make sure that, if people have enough break, and when there's monotony, when you create that level of break. You ask an anonymous question when people are not engaging. What you also need to ensure that your examples are like that everybody gets to participate. You probably cannot start talking about a foreign trip because maybe 10% of the people in the group has never gone on a foreign trip. So it becomes very difficult for people to engage or connect to the example you're giving. So bring in example which are more banal, like probably you go on a shopping, everybody goes for a shopping, or probably buy something or the other. So try and create your example when people are able to connect better with them. Also create. Okay, I think now I'm a host because I got an invitation. Yes. So you have to ensure that you prepare for all the exigencies. At times, what you will have is that the calm is extremely important. As a facilitator, you need to ensure that you have that level of calm no matter what happens. Sometimes maybe the AV will not work. Sometimes you go with the deck, but you do not get an opportunity to present your deck because the presentation is messed up, or probably the laptop is not working, or the connection is not working. So you can always take a handout of your slides. So make sure that you're prepared for all the exigencies. Even if you are not able to use your laptop during the session, you have your presentations, or you have your deck, which is your guiding document throughout the session. Even if the catering doesn't arrive, the venue is too hot or too cold, or the handouts are all messed up, you don't really have in orderly handouts wherein which to use and when and whom to give. So these are these are to some extent preparation issues. So make sure you're prepared for all the exigencies. There would still be unexpected events. Probably the fire alarm goes off and there is a storm warning. Some construction is happening nearby, so there is an incessant sound. It's very difficult to hear you. So the power goes off and on. It's very uncomfortable. So there are certain things which are beyond your control, but make sure that you have brainstormed enough and you're prepared for at least 80% of the issues. Sometimes you have a very quiet group, or sometimes you have, one person is constantly speaking. Somebody is very aggressive and making others also uncomfortable. Somebody is, trying to show authority. So all these situations will come in, but make sure that how do you speak to that person probably in a break, or you set the expectation at the start of the session that if you can keep your conflict away, at least during the duration of the session. And always make sure that you're stopping at key points, and you have that three-strike process wherein you talk about the concept, you let people practice on that concept. At the same time, you ask them that what was their takeaway, or probably you let them speak in terms of their peer conversations, that this is what they have, what they've got from this session. So create those logical breaks, create those chunks of content wherein they're able to reflect onto their learning. And always leave the group on a high note of learning, or have your USP at the end of the session, have a fun video or probably an activity or a great quote to end with. So make sure that, during the session, you let people make an action plan. You also let them schedule certain activities. Probably I need to do you teaching me a coaching skill, and I need to practice it. So probably you pair me with Rupesh and make sure that me and Rupesh are scheduling some session post the training also. If you want to give the laptop to people then and they're scheduling a couple of meetings, so it stays on course, that's a great idea. But you need to be cautious that people are not caught up on their mails. So make sure that you explain it to them. You could help them create an action plan, and which is there in the room, because most of the time we also know that whatever people do in a training room, they do in a training room. Once they're out of the training room, they happily forget about it. So if you create those kind of sticky points wherein something popping up in my calendar because I've set up a meeting with Rupesh, maybe every 15 days or every 10 days after, at least I'll take an effort of going for a coffee with him and probably have some conversation around the content of the training. So if you create those kind of sticky point and those kind of continuity moment or learning moment, the probability is much higher that people are able to implement what they had learned in the training. Also, if you can possibly provide them the list of relevant training material. Also, empower them with a shared. You can always create a group. You can create trios, or you can also create a group of these people. You can ask these people to meet maybe once in every month to reflect onto their learning and what are the opportunities they have applied their learnings in. You hold your learners accountable. So probably you can also create level of connect with them. You can ask them maybe 2 months after this is what they need to share with you. You create those opportunities for practice and see if people are able to get benefited out of it. And finally you provide the feedback. You give appreciation to the people who arrange this training and your support team, and you update your material. Because if you're using this training, maybe say interpersonal communication, your every group is very unique. You have your set of learning with new set of participants. So what I suggest is that you incubate all those learnings. So every time your training should be like a dynamic running document. Anything which you learned in the process, you should update that back to your material, and then use your learning so it's live and vibrant. So this is what we talked in our last class. Anybody wants to add to it or anything specific which has worked for you, which you want to share with the group. I'll be happy if you anything specific from anyone, because we are all group of trainers. I know highly learned people, highly experienced people. Before we start on to facilitation technique, there'll be some level of overlap in the facilitation process and some facilitation technique. So you will feel that overlap, but even if while writing in your questions you create that overlap, I think it'll be great, it'll be good, because it'll reinforce and improvise each of the parts. So Sonakshi, we kept you, you kept logging off, logging in because of last connectivity issue in the last session. Do you wanna? Does this make this flow and revision make sense for you? Anything you want to add? Anything from anyone? And then, okay, Abhishek want me to admit him. Rupeshi, anything from you, or else we get started?
Yeah, I can start because I think everything is covered last time.
Okay, so what I will do, I will share the PDF. My PDF today is very verbose because I quickly made it yesterday and I pretty much listed everything I wanted to talk about. So please excuse me for that. I have not invested enough time onto this, but I wanted to show that, I share with you what I all have experienced. Share. Do you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're seeing a PPT or a PDF?
PDF, ma'am.
Okay. So what I've talked about the strategic role which L&D plays. So normally what happens that if you take up learning as one of an activity, then it becomes, people start seeing you as a transactional partner. It's extremely important for you, for people to see L&D professional as strategic partner and contributing to ROIs for business. It's important that you help them understand that when is the training need, when is a conversation need, and when is it's more of coaching the manager per se, because they are able to carry the conversation in a format that people are able to engage. Normally what they say, I picked this data from SHRM. The cost of hire is, and this is picked up for US. The cost of rehire is from 50% to 50%. So 50% for people who are low on technical side of things, and to 50% for people who are highly technical jobs. And 17.2% is people are disengaged. So what they mean by disengaged, that they are not contributing to, when do you call people engaged? So engaged people are when, you love to come to work. You're able to, your mind is open to contribute in terms of creative ideas, and you're happy with your friends. You look forward to come to office. You look forward to come to work. You're happy working, and you're very, you're talking to people about your work, and you're happy with all that, connection. So when people are disengaged, it becomes very difficult for them to, start their day. The thought of coming to work starts dreading them. They do not want to interact with their peers. They do not want to, help their own peers, and probably even for themselves. Every work is, they become very, very banal, or probably only, they're only contributing from surface of things. They're not willing to analyze their creative potential. They're not willing to think for a job. They are more on an assumption and perception mode, and they're not, applying that level of energy which it takes for them to be more creative, more innovative, or think on a job in terms of be more productive. So these are the people which are disengaged, and each disengaged person contribute or they cost a company 34%. So there are some stats for an organization which has close to 3,725 people. If the 17.2% people are disengaged, then 641 are disengaged. And the average salary, if you take if it is 50K to 150K, so 250K. So average salary I picked up, it's 150K. So the disengagement cost comes out to be $51,000 for each employee. And impact for 641 people would be like 34 million for a company. So if you show them stats, because if they're able to connect with the number, normally what happens that what we are not able to take into account is, if the people are working and coming to work and they are recruiting the new resource, what we are not analyzing that, the new person will come up. People will have to invest time in terms of finding the right talent, interviewing the right person. A lot of people will be involved in the process, and there is huge cost to it, and the kind of opportunity cost lost when this profile was not working. So eventually what happens that, and the time it takes for this person to be productive. So there are a couple of costs which are involved in the process, and which it leads to. So you make sure that your investment in terms of right hiring and right training for people is seen as a strategic, intervention to the business. So it's extremely important when you are also creating training opportunities, or when you are given some kind of training mandates, you make sure that you do enough analysis in terms of audience to connect, to help business also connect it to ROIs, and at the same time also bring your audience to a point wherein they are willing to learn what you're trying to teach them. You always want to be successful, and you want to do a good job out of things. And if at times you just want to do a training, you've been given a mandate and you just do a training, it becomes very difficult for people to connect to the larger scheme of things. So you need to have that kind of a strategic lens when you're preparing the training and when you're presenting it back to the business, to help them analyze what impact training has and how it translate to ROIs. Does this make sense? And what I mean by learning culture is we're constantly learning. So even if you are appreciating my behavior, or if you're rewarding my behavior, I probably learn that behavior. And if you are actually reprimanding my behavior, that's an indication for me to ensure that I do not repeat this behavior. So we're constantly learning. Learning is something which is happening everywhere, in every interaction, in every organization. So that's something which you cannot take away from people, because we are humans. We are constantly assuming. We are constantly judging. At the same time, we are constantly learning. If something connect with our insight, then what we do is that we stick that as a neural pathway. So what happens that we are constantly associating things, the new things, with the older experience. But when the older experience which we had with that data get erased, we are willing to, if something new has connected back to our insight, we are willing to register it and store it. So it gets stored in our body as in our mind, as neural pathways. And that's the experience we every time recall when we have a similar situation. So that's the reason we normally say that if you're able to connect to that level of insight as a trainer with people, that's when people are really learning with you. So you create that kind of an aha moment for people. So that's when you create, so then people become, they become really fan of you, and that's when they connect to your trainings, and that's when the effort which you're putting around the training really reaps the real benefit. So that's extremely important. And how do you create it? And for that to happen, you need to do your homework in terms of doing the right audience analysis and connecting it to people, so that's how they will learn along with you. So you leverage that kind of, you create that kind of a culture, and you leverage that for your trainings. Anything, anybody wants to add anything to it? So behavior change. It's extremely what we are trying to achieve with, most of the training, what we are trying to achieve with is in most of the time, and these are the real behaviors, which are the habits people we have. So where we have all habits around, like how do we communicate, how do we use technology. And this is extreme, and these are the behaviors which actually create our level of effectiveness with our peers, with our stakeholders, with our superiors. So what you're trying to do through the training activities is you're trying to bring in that kind of a behavior change. So it's imperative that learning professional get really crisp on what habit is that you want to instill in your learner. If you can identify the words and actions, what happens that people are constantly, using words and they are doing actions. So what you need to identify in your training, that what are the words and action they currently have, and what are the words and action you want them to, go to. So you need to be very sure and very crisp and concrete in terms of identifying that this is where we are and this is where we want to go to. For you to, to be able to do that, you need to ensure that you're crystallizing the existing behaviors and existing words and existing actions they're doing. So brain science has proven that definitely, that if you are able to, you want to create powerful learning solutions, you need to be able to move them from behavior A to behavior B so that they are able to be, more effective in their jobs. It's a very difficult job because, it's normally people have the tendency of, sticking back to their old relevant behaviors because they're averse to change. It takes a lot of energy and it's excruciating. You need to be creative. It takes effort and energy and time for them to change and, be looking at ways of bringing that conscious change of behavior which you are teaching them. So that's the reason people normally say that so there is information and instruction. Can somebody tell me the difference between information and instruction? Can I hear from? I want this session not to be very monotonous because this is very interactive. This is training, and wherein we all get to experience with our all experiences. Everyone has a unique understanding of things, and everybody has unique ways of bringing their experience to the session. So I would request people to contribute here in terms of what's their experience had been with people. So what is an information and what is an instruction?
Instructions means order, ma'am. And information, I just want to share some information with the learner.
Sure.
Yeah, can I, ma'am? Jitendra?
Yes, please.
Yeah, information, ma'am, to providing the factual information about any particular topic or subject. And instruction ki how to do, when to do, and how it will be executed in the field.
Wonderful.
That is the information and instruction.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing it. So what, as both of you rightly mentioned, that instruction is practicing and letting people know how should they be doing it. What in information people can simply, I can tell you that this is where your policies are. This is the process what you need to follow. But at the same time, instruction is more like, I'm telling you it and you try it. So eventually what with more practice, so instruction get you to practice. I tell you this is how you need to do. You practice doing it. I give you a feedback. I let you, repeatedly do that one more time. So I give you instructions in different format, in different scenarios, and I let you practice that. So you make sure that your trainings they're designed and customized enough in a format when people get to practice the session. So how do you create that kind of forced practice within your sessions, and you let people choose those habits. So how are habits formed? So people have a cue, there is a trigger, and there is a routine activity, and there is a reward associated with it. So morning, every time the clock strikes 6, it's my cue. I get up and have a cup of coffee. That's my routine. I have the reward I have is I feel post 30 minutes after, or probably immediately, I have that dose of caffeine. I feel rejuvenated. I feel refreshed. I feel more productive, and I'm able to to work more effectively. So that's the reward I have. So everything which is then there is these things get settled in the basal ganglia, and then you're able to do them without any kind of an effort. So you have a cue, you follow that routine, and you have a reward associated with it. So at the same time, when you do this something like that for 40 times, and there are 40 repetition of a particular behavior, it sets in your basal ganglia. It sets as a habit in your basal ganglia. So what you're trying to do with training is you are trying to change and bring in those habits. So what you have to do is if you make people practice, or everybody is practicing maybe once in a day, something will happen for them for in a 40 days. If they are practicing probably once in a week, this will settle for them in 10 months time. So you need to make sure that you create that kind of repetition maximally, and at least 40 opportunities for a repetition for somebody, so they are able to take this as a habit. So, and you create that kind of motivation, you create that kind of triggers, and you create that kind of a routine. So if you help create, and it's very difficult probably in their in their normal day-to-day life and in their working lives to create that kind of activities, and that's how we create trainings. So that it takes, in trainings you have enough opportunities, you have enough flexibility in terms of creating those opportunities for people to practice. So as I said in the beginning of the session, that talking about a behavior is not about doing a behavior. So you make sure that you let people practice, and you let them practice enough. And your trainings are not more on an information side, they're more on an instruction side, wherein you create that kind of cues and triggers and motivation and that kind of practicing moments. And these are like, developmental opportunities. And that's when people will practice and they'll get more comfortable with it. So probably intersperse within your training enough level of practice so that by end of a session, they are comfortable of practicing it on its own, and that you're creating that kind of maybe calendar moment, scheduling moment for letting them practice. And at least you gave them an opportunity to practice something like this for 40 times. So once you strike that chord of 40 times with them, then they'll be more comfortable of taking this change further. Are you with me on that?
Yes, ma'am.
As we talked about adult learning, it's extremely important. So adult learning, what happens, it's extremely important. Most of the time, the training we get into, it's not relevant, and it's not, I probably need to know how should I converse with my consulting client now. And so what I want to do is, maybe I want to quickly go onto a YouTube and see a video. How should I continue that conversation? It's accessible. I can, access it on my phone. I can access it on my laptop. And it's relevant for me because I want to learn in the moment. So it's extremely important that, you know, you create relevant training opportunities and you create relevant trainings, and these trainings are accessible. And that's the reason it is so famous for, you know, on-demand learning are so famous for people, because, you know, what adults are looking for, because they're wanting to solve the real life problems. So it's extremely important that, you know, you create training, the trainings are relevant and trainings are accessible for them. On demand, and there is a misnomer which says one size fit all. So one size fit all does not work. You know, everyone's need today is very different. Everyone's, you know, ability of absorbing. So people come from varied experience with varied level of, you know, number of years of experience and varied background of education and environment. So everybody, and they come up with, yes, absolutely different level of assumptions and perceptions. It's extremely difficult and important for you to make sure that you create relevant learning for maybe within the session also, you're creating enough variants for people, you know, to pick up something or the other. We talked about information versus instruction. We often talk about 70-20-10. So 70-20-10 is the way 70-20-10 was made in 1980 with a set of 200 people, and they were given a survey and they were asked a question that where maximum of your learning comes from. So what they said is that, you know, they learned 70% from 70% from their most difficult experiences, or with the most difficult organization they work with. 20% is their social learning, wherein they learn it with you know, peer interactions or maybe the social media groups. 10% is when they learned in the formal training groups. It's absolutely up to you to, you know, to see and how they want to use that 70-20-10. It's not written and casted in stone in terms of, you know, 70% is what they will learn from their organization or from their difficult experience. But you create that, but taking cue from that 70-20-10, you create, when you create, you know, on-demand learning, and when you create, you know, customized solutions for learning, this is one you can probably use. You can, you know, use the thought process of people that, you know, they're learning from the peer interaction. So while creating your exercises within the session, you can take cue from the 70-20-10. Does this make sense? Have you heard of this Kubler-Ross change curve?
No, ma'am. First time I'm seeing this.
No, ma'am, never.
Okay. So I thought I wanted to talk about an activity which is around change, so that, you know, I can help you understand that, you know, what probably an audience analysis means. So I picked up from a Kotler book, which is like a guru for change management, and I picked up this, and you know, this graph has gone very famous if you see post COVID, because, you know, it reflects onto the mental state of people. So I have, you know, I've seen two big critiques of the learning industry. The first is that a lot of learning is just misaligned to the needs of organization and the people it's supposed to be serving. If it's not solving the real problem, then it's not good use of anyone's time. And my second is that a lot of learning is just not sophisticated enough for adult learners. It's our attempt to create one-size solution. We often either oversimplify things or, you know, gloss over the sticky issues. But that's exactly what we need to focus on. You know, what I'm trying to, you know, don't believe that, you know, if you're very perky and have high energy, then you will create more engagement. The secret to deliver great learning and development lives in your ability to assess your audience and meet their needs. You have different audience. One is your stakeholder and one are your learners. So if I probably, you know, today call you and ask you to solve a problem, you need to probably speak to me, and also you need to speak to, so I'm your stakeholder, but you also need to speak to the people who actually would be the part of training, because eventually if they are not willing to accept what you're trying to train, and if you do not, you know, if you do not cover their peculiar problems, they would not be willing, there would not be a real change in the organization. So you make sure that while you design the training, you create enough understanding from an audience perspective and from a stakeholder perspective. So I will talk about something for an organization. So maybe there is an organization wherein CTO wanting a change, and they want their man leader better equipped to lead people through change. And for you to drive a right solution, first of all, you need to assess what's their current skills and abilities and where they want to get to. So you can ask, some consulting questions with the stakeholder. First, you get the view of a leader. Leader is trying to, change the process. He wants to completely overhaul the structure, and he want to change the structure and services which they offer, and he wants to do that for next 36 months time. And when you go and speak with the people, they say that they're when you try and talk to them, they say they're in a lot of pain, they're already overwhelmed with the work, and there is so much to do. So they're not willing to bring in that change because they're already overwhelmed, and the team is new. Either some of them are new, or some of them are some of them are old, or some of them are already overpressurized. So on a mental level, they're not willing to listen to what the leader is trying to bring in. And there are some collaboration challenges within the team wherein they're not willing to, things are not in their control, and they're not willing to listen to each other. So you heard that they're overwhelmed, they do not have coordination within the team to be effective. They're not convinced with the change. So you need to make sure that you're solving for all of it. You don't want to solve it for a leader, you want to solve it for these people as well, so that eventually they are willing and they're accepting the change and they're implementing the change, and they're within the process and they're motivated throughout the process. So there are certain emotional processes you need to take care of, because so you need to ensure that while you create and design a solution for them, you also train or you create some kind of an emotional skill understanding for them, so that they're able to collaborate better with them, and they are motivated to execute this plan. So in this change diagram which I've tried to show is, anything which happens in the beginning, it brings in that level of a shock. So when you see that kind of a shock understanding within the minds of people, when you read in their minds that they are shocked, you create shared knowledge. You share more knowledge, when everybody would be initially in a denial mode, and they'll feel when this is continuing for a local time, for a longer time, we feel frustrated. So when we are first of all, you're sharing knowledge, you're creating alignment within the people. When people are frustrated, you maximize your communication. It's not you only in this problem, I am also part of the similar situation, so we together see to it as in we're together, so we constantly motivating each other. And then with that, we don't let them go into a depression. We spark that level of motivation in them, and we try and create that kind of an experiment, and we develop capability. We take, when we bring in that kind of a change, and we integrate that change for a better tomorrow. If you actually try and reflect on this change curve with something like COVID, which has come as a pandemic in everyone's life, so you will be able to relate to your mental state. Are you with me on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So what possibly, these are the mental states. So these are the mental states which will come in any change situation. So when do you create, so communication is extremely important, and helping and people staying motivated throughout the course, and you understanding their mental state. See, if I'm talking to probably Sonakshi, and if she's going through, some from a bad patch in life, so maybe for me to acknowledge or listen to what she's going through and acknowledging her mental state before I am asking her to do something is extremely important. So it's important for you to acknowledge that mental state, because that's where once you are, so you're as good as how you make people feel. So it's extremely important. That's your first ladder. So you strike that chord on emotion. You understand that person. Then you bring that person in a state of mind when they're willing to listen to you. Once you have heard them, you've listened to them, you have earned the right to talk. So, and then they are, they're more open to have a conversation with you. So these are the different states which I picked this diagram from Kotler also, which talks about these 8 steps in a different format. If you're interested, I'll share this with you. But this could be, any change which you're trying to bring in your organization, or any, workshop which you're creating around a change. These are the certain things which can be a guiding principle, as in how should you be designing your content, and what are the different states you should be careful about. Yeah? Make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm just talking about in case you have to design a workshop around change, then probably you can get, you can take cues from it while designing it. It's extremely important. Okay. How you create that, we talked about insight a lot already. So when you create a story, when you have, starting point of a story and a middle of a story and then end of a story wherein this is where you want to reach to. So it's extremely important that you break your story in a format of a start, middle, and end. And at the same time, you are able to connect to that level of insight within people, because that's where the real learning happens. And that's where you create that kind of an aha moment. So, and your training becomes gold standard. So you have to give them a conceptual modeler or data to have them understand things from a 30,000 feet view. But at the same time, during the process, so you need to take care of their emotional state. You need to make sure that you help them practice enough during your training session, so they are willing to bring in, because most of the time we all want to be in a comfort state. When we are over pressurized, we always want to, remove and move back to the older state or older ways of doing things. So you make sure that you create enough practice moments for them, so they are comfortable with, spending that level of initial energy and time and effort in doing and practicing it, and they stay motivated throughout the process. And you create, and you help them also create it connected to the insight, and then help them see the benefit of it, and there is some kind of a reward associated with it. So you help them understand throughout the process, since it is a 36-month process and you have to design a training solution for it. So you make sure that you create, maybe your trainings are interspersed 3 to 4 trainings. You make sure that, start and end, and you take people to the last state. So you don't try and solve it, and you don't try and bring the strategy right in the beginning. You try and, bring it in a format. By bringing it a story, it becomes much easier to connect with the people when you start with the story, and your starting story has an end which talks about the actions and words, what they're doing currently. And you let them, in between, take care of their emotional state, take care of their challenges with their peers, take care of their, collaboration issues and overwhelming issues, and, reorganization issues, and then let them take care of all those issues in the process, and help them understand the strategy in a process and implementation and benefit. So this is, it becomes easier for you to connect when people are able to connect to a larger picture. So it's not only a format, it's also, it's not only a delivery, but it's also a format for training, which is important. And we'll talk about what are the different training formats which are currently available. I'm sure you have used all of them, but let's quickly talk about what is synchronous and asynchronous, when everybody is learning at the same time versus people are learning at different times. Like this particular session wherein we were all together, so we are together in the same time. You can do an individual and collaborative. Individual when we do normally one-on-one coaching initiatives, or collaborative when people are learning in group. In self-paced, people can stop the session on their own. People can pause the session. People can repeat the session. So maybe when they are going back, when they are seeing an e-learning specifically. So considering the pace at which they learn, and they can specifically pause, start, replay certain sections of a training. So it is self-paced. One is an instruction-led, wherein everybody need to move along with the pace the instructor have. We can have a structured or we can have unstructured. Structured is like a design experience. I talked about a change management training, which you can probably make. So that'll be structured. Unstructured will be where it happens in the moment. It's happening in the interaction with people. Online, offline, we all know. Online is when specifically we are seeing something on an electronic media. This could be phone, tablet, laptop. Even if you are, reading company policies on laptop, they'll be online. But if you are reading them in a handbook, so that'll become offline. One is static, which is same for every learner, and one is adaptive, which is more required as per adult learning principle, when you are bringing the change in comparison to needs and abilities of each learner. Off the shelf, something which you pick up probably as an e-learning from off the shelf. Bespoke, wherein you are creating some level of customization. Maybe you're picking a content off the shelf and you're bringing some level of customization, so which are more relevant for that particular culture and organization as for the values they have. So normally bespoke is what works well for people, because they are able to connect the dots and they're able to connect with the learning. It depends. I mean, you can pick up a combination of both. Sometimes people what have is when they are doing a session, they are asking people to have some level of online courses as a pre-read. And when they go for a one-on-one interaction, there is a face-to-face coaching or face-to-face training, they do some level of customization in face-to-face. So it's like a blended learning most of the time. Most of us do. Supposedly you want to teach coaching skill to people, you can create multiple reinforcement also, like you take people into a room in a collaborative way, help them understand what is the coaching skill, and then you let them practice within their peer group. Then maybe end of the session you let them read a good book on a coaching. We all talked about it, the practice. I think the practice is extremely important. It's something wherein that's where you're building those neural pathways and you're turning behaviors into habits. So as we hone and improve our skills and developing mastery, it is extremely important that you have that kind of the learning strategies connected with the practicing strategy. So sometime maybe what happens is that if you're teaching a complex skill, like I talked about a coaching skill, maybe coaching you can break it into further skill. One skill is how do you open a coaching conversation. Second is probably how do you create an appreciative inquiry, what kind of questions you can probably ask, or maybe how do you listen, and then how do you garner more information, and how do you give feedback. So what you can possibly do is you can further break it into sections, and we let people practice each of the session and each of the session and sections in the sessions, and then let them bind this together and then create a story. We will talk about briefly, the facilitation techniques. In between, we have talked about it, but we will try and elaborate more on this. What is action planning? If you do action planning, you will definitely create more effectiveness in your sessions, as in what the action point people are expected to do. And what you do is that that action plan, you let them practice then and there to an extent. Maybe if it's a behavior change, and you also let them schedule the interaction in what is an estimated time. You let people own and be accountable for their session. So you make sure that you let them, you give them enough tools, so something which they can practice within the session. There are you can have people. I know we had scorecard for leaders when we were doing behavioral sessions. For them, we had scorecard which used to display these amber, these lights for them, red, amber, green, showing their progress on it. But at the same time, don't try and write somebody's action plan. Don't try and connect the action plan, so everybody need to agree on what they're taking as an action plan. And it needs to be constantly progress reported, and bring in functional manager along with it. And these action needs to be very precise, and there need to be a deadline to it. It cannot be an ambiguous word. There are certain things like brainstorming. Brainstorming works. It's very important as in how are you carrying the brainstorming. It's an ideal tool wherein you create a lot of ideas, and these ideas should be free flowing. It's at the same time, what happens is there are a lot of issues in brainstorming. Sometimes maybe there is a person who wield more power and who has a higher position, so who hijack the session. There are conflict within people. There are certain people who are more introvert. They do not speak. So the facilitator who is actually doing the brainstorming has a big responsibility of ensuring that everybody gets to participate, and how and where this person make everybody participate. So there are extremely important, else what will happen that and you're not bringing everybody together and you're not getting benefited from. So you're not all the brains are storming. Maybe 10% of the brains are storming. So you need to make sure that you're using or leveraging and be exhaustive of all the point of view which you have in the room. So what happens is there are certain ways you can possibly do it. I will spend some time on brainstorming because this is more often, and this is more useful, and this has various variants. So react versus create. If I ask people to create maybe certain ideas as in how can I increase the visibility of maybe how can I be more creative in my design. Or maybe I can possibly say, okay, can you draw a monster for me? I will have very less number of volunteers who probably would be willing to talk about it, versus if I draw a letter 6 and I draw something on a board and ask people to turn this into a monster. So people would be then more willing, and they'll be more creative, and they would be more willing to turn that 6 into a monster rather than creating a fresh monster. So if you let people to think something, to start with something, it becomes much easier for people to open up, versus when you ask people to start completely afresh. So when you give people certain inputs, you can always give them so everybody has a point of view. So you let maybe if I have a camera in my dog's neck, I am watching the scene from my dog's point of view. If I have a camera in my hand, if I'm seeing the picture from my point of view. So everybody has their own assumptions and perspective. Everybody has their own point of view. So you make sure you let people exercise, and if you let people reflect on their point of view. Because if you want to be really successful in your brainstorming activity, you need to make sure that when one person, so each one of us are given the scenario, or given the ecosystem, or given the environment where we are willing to talk about our point of view. You can always, you can use adjectives. You can maybe like to explain this to people. What you can probably do, maybe there is a sports accessory for a lawn tennis sports accessory. So if you look at the ground from a net's point of view, look at the ground from a racket's point of view, you look at the ground from a person's point of view. So if you tilt the picture, if you try and see it from a different angle, it looks different. So you let people explain it to them, let them own, and let them be more valuable about their perspective, and you let people, participate in the session. You make sure you can always create a story, so that let people be more creative, that let people open up. you can break people into small groups. So the point is that you make everybody participate. In the larger group, there is a higher probability that some of the more vocal ones will participate, but some of them do not participate, and then they happily close down their introvert, and they say that exercise is any which way is moving, so there is no need for them to contribute. But it's extremely important that you get everybody to stop, and you have diverse set of mind. And if you want to leverage them, what you can possibly do, maybe you let people talk. You can have certain keywords. Maybe you have your group of 6 people, so you define, along with 6 people, you define three broad different ideas. Then you combine these ideas into 3 major heads. You let people and they then divide people into a group in a pair and give these 3 themes to people in pair. So everybody gets to speak, everybody gets to talk about what they talk about those themes. And then over a period of time, what you can do is that you can combine it, you finally can come up to one idea. But in the process, if you've been rigorous and if you've been aggressive in making sure that everybody get to participate, then small groups works better. Pairs works highly well, because then everybody participates. What you can do is that you can keep breaking people into the groups until you have everybody contributing. You can have an idea wherein free flowing mind, you let everybody, because it becomes very easy to connect with words, and words can build up stories and words can build up ideas. So you can create a idea of web. You can have different words, and different words can have different ideas. So these are certain things which let your group thinking. So you need to be very creative in terms of understanding that how do you let entire group think, or how do you thrive creatively together. At this, because I've spoken so much now, I want one of you to probably, 2 of you to talk about, have you done this exercise, or how have you done, and what are the challenges you have faced, and any specific suggestion around that. Are you all with me? I think I'm talking too much today.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So probably maybe 2 of you suggest, maybe Sudeepji, have you used brainstorming? What has worked for you? What has not worked for you? Maybe one suggestion on the kind of activities you do. These are the small tools which you can use within your sessions also, wherein you're trying to create some level of engagement. What you can do is you can use brainstorming maybe in certain sections, wherein you're trying to generate ideas on the activities which you can probably do, or maybe a certain problem you're trying to solve. What will happen that you still carry on, maybe you with minor tweaks, you still carry on your training agenda, but at the same time, when people have contributed, they will be more engaged in the process. So you make sure that you let them contribute, because they will feel, they'll be willing to contribute to a solution. They'll feel listened, they will feel heard, that they're able to suggest, and your idea is what you are taking forward. I mean, their idea merged with your idea. I think, Rupesh ji, we want a suggestion from you on brainstorming. What worked for you? What did not work for you?
No, I think we were doing the time of when we do small group activities. Then we use this brainstorming, and I think on that basis we decide. I mean, because you have different ideas from different minds. So pros and cons both we have to, register, and then on that basis we decide something what we do.
Maybe something which you have seen as the biggest challenge while brainstorming in the group.
Challenge, but some people don't actually open up. this is the biggest challenge because everybody, I mean, think that some other person will tell better. So, but yes, it is a good idea when, I mean, when we.
Perfect.
Ma'am,
Yeah,
Abhishek here, if I may add.
Yes, please, Abhishek.
Actually, ma'am, brainstorming, if I can see, so majority of the times we do use it for the groups, and in sometimes then when we also put people into certain projects, and that's where if there is a problem, also some measures that they are turning red, and that's when we put the people into these smaller groups to have these brainstorming sessions. Additionally, what I can also recall, some time back we were also doing it for to arrive on some maybe some fishbone analysis. So that also we were doing, and that's where we were bringing people together from different departments, and wherein the people were actually connected towards one problem, and that actually helped come out with several ideas. And one challenge what I usually see is, as what my colleague Rupesh was also sharing, that yes, people usually don't come up with their own suggestions and ideas. And one thing what I really liked what you shared, that we will have to give some cue in the beginning for the people to begin, and that's very important, because unless we don't provide that cue, the ideas don't actually start flowing in. So this is one thing what I found, is that usually there are many people you'll find in the groups who are not very much willing to talk. And so maybe one thing what I tried and adopted is that I divided them into further into smaller groups. I gave them the the chits or the papers to write down. Okay, you don't want to speak, don't speak, jot down your ideas.
Yes.
So that's one thing that actually helped. So we collected a lot of ideas, and that's when we can then later on we can of course analyze and see that which ideas are better, how what we can work upon. So that's one thing what I really found that helped.
Sure, sure. Yeah, Abhishek, I completely agree. And thanks for sharing it, because yes, sometimes people are not comfortable talking. So these secret chits and balance, they really help. And as we all talked about, those input exercises, maybe, writing a lot of adjective on the board, maybe giving them starting point, and, letting them maybe see a video in terms of POV. That's very useful. So POV is actually a film concept. So वो दूसरा कैमरा दिखाते हैं ना, हर एक के एंगल से कैमरा दिखाते हैं, because कैमरा उतना ही देख पाता है. And no matter how similar we are, our point of view would always be different. So what happens that normally we say, okay, we are all humans, but we have our unique set of biases, assumptions, perceptions, our upbringing, our experiences. It is not at all possible to look at the same thing from a same angle. Like even if you walk with me on an LA, and maybe end of the LA, somebody asks us about the experience of probably what did you see and what did Vandana you see, we both will have different things to describe. So we are always, and all of us are always looking at the same thing with a different lens. So how do we leverage that lens, and how do we bring that lens to fore in terms of, that's where the ideas generate. So first is definitely comfort and environment. But yes, POV is extremely important, wherein everyone, they might say, and they might come in a comfort zone, but they'll have value to add in the session. We have this imposter syndrome, that I'm not good enough. So most of the time, people have that kind of, insecurity, that even if I say something that might not be relevant and I might be perceived as incompetent, I better stay quiet. Or sometimes people feel that I'm too intelligent for this group. I better not speak. Anything from you, Sudeep?
In brainstorming, we come across actually two extremes. There are a group of people who are not at all willing to speak, and there are people who try to usurp the whole thing, the whole process.
Yes.
So the challenge is actually to balance the two.
True.
Getting something from those who are actually not opening up, and keeping the people mum who have had their turn. So that's the challenge. As a facilitator, we have to have that tact.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That share your tact. So I shared a couple of things which I used, which is maybe react versus create in POV and input exercises and breaking them into small groups and stories. So anything specifically which you calling it as your tact and which probably others can also use, please share.
I find it as a challenge. I mean, I've not been able to master that because in a number of sessions we had this brainstorming, and one or two people, they have kind of hijacked the whole thing.
Yes, yes, there are a lot of power equations. Yes.
Few things I tried was off the track, while having tea during the tea break or something. I just put there in mind that there are other participants also, so you should give others an opportunity. Because you don't want to offend the participants at the same time.
True, true. You'll close them for rest of the session. So that's something which you don't want to stop the flow of ideas. That's something we don't want to do.
So that is one thing I have tried, but still most of the time it doesn't work. So I am not able to master that, actually, frankly speaking.
So try using some of these ideas which I just talked about. Because you cannot evaluate, but at the same time, rather than trying to bum or quieten the person who is very talkative, you can probably engage more people and make the engagement easier for other people, and try and figure out why others not participating. Make it much easier for them. Create that kind of a risk-free environment. Continue giving ideas. Probably, let them only write adjectives. So, somebody writes maybe translucent, somebody writes transformative. Let them, then translate the story coming out of a word. So let them first write those words, those adjectives. So, which is much easier for them to talk about the full-fledged idea rather than, make it much simpler for them. Then, you can progressively take them there. They will also unfold the words, and then this string of words and series of words, they will create and craft their own ideas. Let them open their mind. True. So since brainstorming works very well, I have used it more often. I mean, I have a couple of slides which are explaining those things only. Meta planning. This is where I picked up from your idea, Abhishek, wherein you can have post-it notes. You can probably put them on a flip chart, and you then club them into logically clubbing ideas, and then coming up and finally reducing the number of ideas and post-its you have. You can do multi-voting. You can once you have those brainstorming, once you're trying to reach onto a decision, you can do voting. Typically, this let you further analyze that what is working, what is not working. This ranking is again a decision-making technique. Once you have done the brainstorming, wherein you rank one idea against the other, and you finally reach onto a decision. Reverse brainstorming, sometimes when you have, you're trying to solve a business problem, maybe what are the behaviors what you have to solve a business problem. Maybe reverse brainstorming is that how do you improve on business communication versus how do you worsen the business communication. So if something is not working for you, then you take a reverse, you twist the problem, and you can also do a reverse brainstorming. Sometimes this also let people to think. You can do energizers. Energizers, as we all know, energizers are actually, they have this, let people have those flow of adrenaline, let people thinking, and they will, engage the people. People will be motivated. They'll be happy. They will have, with energizers, you can have that, their breaths rising up, and they're high on energy, and then they are more willing. You create that level of willingness and that kind of bond within your that kind of bond within your people. People might come from different groups, but with this kind of energizers, you create some level for bonding within the training, wherein people are willing to talk and work with each other. So I'm sure you use energizers. You can use flip charts. Flip charts are very important because flip chart let you progressively move that you write on. These are the expectations which you want to do. You can always, you can always write, use bold different colors. You so let people clearly identify on what areas is what they're trying to solve for. Certain discipline in terms of which side of the flip chart should you stand. You can always go wild wherein you're not letting people to think on something and you feel the group has gone monotonous. Maybe you use half the letter, half the sentences. You wouldn't be good if, so let people complete the sentence. So everybody will have something to say about it. So it becomes easier for a group to participate. Yes, you set ground rules. You are, you create that kind of how will you be willing to participate? What will be practical for you? You give them feedback, and on a flip chart also, as in you can take note from them. How do they want to use a flip chart? And also make sure that you also what you can probably agree with participant that each one of you will get to summarize and probably share one learning or maybe one action plan, but a logical end of a session. So just to reinforce your learning within your ground rules, you can agree with people that how will they give a peer feedback, how will they accept a feedback, how will they create their own action plan, how will they summarize the action. So, you can agree on a teamfold behavior. You can agree on certain learning rules. You can agree on ensuring, that people are supporting their peers in their learning. Like even in our, one of our organization, one of our performance objective was that how do I help others to achieve their objective? So if I'm working, say, with Jitendra, so maybe one of my success criteria would be that I'm making Jitendra be more successful in one of his objectives. So maybe in the ground rule itself, also what you can try and keep as a ground rule is that how do they make or reinforce the learning for other participants within the group. So you can be more creative around your ground rules. You can have you can always have a group review. So for each of an exercise, you can have group review to get an understanding what's working well for them, what is it that we should do differently. We all do icebreakers. So icebreakers, as they let people come together, and they could be short and simple. They should not be very long and complex. And what you can try and do is that when I do icebreaker, wherein when I do a session, say on assumptions and perceptions, I do an icebreaker wherein I break the group into two. I break a bigger group into two smaller groups, and I let one group make a circle, place two bottles at the center of the circle, and the other group probably, they try the instruction I give to the first group is they do not break the circle and they do not leave the hand. So they're in circle holding hand with each other. The other group I give the instruction that they need to pick those bottles. So what the first group has now, there is a tussle between these two groups while picking up the bottle. But what happens that when I try and, this group, so what they have assumed in the process, the only instruction was that they should not break the circle and they should not leave the hands. They could have moved to a different side of the bottles, and the first group, second group would have picked up the bottle. But now they're fighting. They're assuming that I also said that bottles should not be picked up. So what happens that with our past experience and our past knowledge, we are constantly we're not asking clarifying questions, and we are not clarifying instructions, and we are constantly assuming, and we assume a lot of things, and we make sure that these things are followed without even realizing or without invalidating what we asked for it. So this could have been an easier activity where one group moved to a side, the other group pick up a bottle. But now they're holding hands and they're fighting. They're not leaving the circle around the bottles. And so so you can connect your activities also to the subject you're training. So this is what I do on assumptions. You can always do a round robin, which is wherein everybody get to participate and everybody. So this is how you create more participation. You can do a structured problem solving or decision making also, wherein everybody get to solve a problem, they generate. So there are a lot of things which will happen during the process. So they'll define a problem, they will set the background, they'll generate ideas, and they will decide on what ideas, and they will finalize, and they will check commitments. You can do, rating scale also. You can make people work in pairs and trios, because this increases your participation. How can you be more effective? Physically and mentally be prepared, that you need to be a trainer. You create the right environment, you set the expectations, you establish the expectations. So this is what pretty much we have talked throughout the session. This would be the last slide, and which is self-explanatory. Anything which any one of you use and want to talk about it?
Didn't get your question, ma'am.
Any specific technique which you use during facilitation which makes it much better and easier for participant, and which you can probably share beyond what I talked about? Anything, or maybe examples of energizer and icebreakers you want to share, the one I used?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe something which you use which work very well for you connecting with the particular theme, that'll be very useful for all of us.
Yeah, sure. Well, during a communication workshop, I had a small activity wherein we picked up a controversial topic, where we had two extreme views. So I picked up two people with extreme views, and one person was supposed to give his view, and the other person, he had to understand that and not counter him but support his views. But he was having his own sets of notions which was completely contrary to him. So that is how we created a very nice interaction wherein you have to listen what you don't want to listen, understand that, summarize it, and explain it to the group.
Wonderful.
So that was a very effective game.
Wonderful. Yeah, very difficult with adults.
Yeah, because I mean, initially it was very, very difficult for them to even accept that view, forget about listening to it and then summarizing. So they were mixing up their own views, but
Agree.
which they were not supposed to do.
True. We are all very intelligent beings, no? So we have to be judgmental. We have to bring in our assumptions because we know it better than you.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing it, Sabir. Anything else from anyone? Maybe icebreakers or energizers, because they're like, they are lifeline of a training session. So anything which you probably want to share, which has worked very well and which is highly liked by people.
Ma'am, Abhishek here, if I may share.
Yes, please, Abhishek.
Ma'am, actually, we were doing this one workshop for the mentors into our company, and that's when we put them into one activity wherein we gave them some very simple pictures. So first we divided them into pairs, and we made them sit, back to back to each other. So we gave one picture to one of the person whom we said that you are the mentor, and the other person is your mentee. And so now you dictate the other person, and the other person will draw whatever you have on your picture. So without seeing it. And then when the pictures, when they came out, and then so what was there on the picture, what was drawn was way apart.
Agree.
Then that's how, like, it made me easy to relate, and to make them sensitized that it's though we give a lot of instructions, a lot of information from our side, but then whether the mentee is actually able to understand that, and are we checking the understanding of the other person or not. So that becomes very important in a relationship between a mentor and a mentee. And then at times we see if the relationship is failing and the other person is not performing, is not maybe having a clarity of the objectives, and is not aligned to the company's goals. So that's where it becomes difficult. So it works very well for the new area managers as well as for the mentors. So this I found really helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing it, Abhishek.
Ma'am, I have one question.
Yes, please.
And before that, we were doing some classroom trainings where we are physically present as a facilitator, as a training. Also, we are interacting physically, face to face. But now it's very difficult in a virtual era.
True.
So, in a virtual era, connecting with your learners and keep engaging them is a difficult task, which I am facing nowadays. Because it is, we do long hours of inductions where people get bored, session get monotonous. Even after we will do quiz, poll, and some activities which we can do virtually. But still, is anybody has any suggestion or anything which they suggest me? So I think it would be help me. It will help me to implement in my sessions and more engaging session I am able to do.
Sure. So the question is open to everybody's, please.
Meena ma'am, thanks for asking this, because I also had a similar question, wanted to ask ma'am the same thing.
Because these activities, flip chart activities and some other activities we were doing when we were in the class sessions, when we were doing in the class. But virtually it is very difficult because face-to-face sessions are not there. Even we are not able to do the session with the video mode also, because connectivity is one of the more issue we get.
True.
So off video mode and doing sessions is like, to whom I am talking? I'm talking to the system, or to whom I'm talking? Sometimes we feel like this. We are talking just to the system only. There is someone is there or not. I think you are also feeling the same when you are doing the sessions for us. So that's why you're asking, you're all with me or not, because we feel like we are talking to the system, not with the people. So how this issue get resolved, or this problem, or what I say, I don't know. This type of thought came accidentally when we do sessions regular on from morning to evening. So if anyone can suggest you, or anyone can suggest any idea or any suggestion you have, please guide us.
So
me
the question,
and Abhishek on the same note. Now that's why
I will probably share a couple of suggestions I have, maybe end of the session, but you know, we all equally, we are in the same boat, so we are equally struggling with the same issue, and we are trying to be more creative and innovative in terms of creating that level of engagement. But I still leave it open to everyone else. So, you know, so we are brainstorming together. So maybe one time we have to get into a brainstorming exercise where we all
brainstorming I did
one brainstorming is required.
One brainstorming I was doing from myself from last 2-3 days. We start doodling. I think learning doodling is one of the things which I think can engage more in virtual learning. Instead of running presentations and doing poll and quizzes, if not helping me a lot, then if I start doodling and presenting that in the inductions, I think that will help, which I have thought till now. From last 2-3 days, I'm thinking a lot on this.
Wonderful. Yes, I'm with you in that. I think, yes, you're making sense to me. But I still want to hear Rupesh and Sudeep.
Yes, ma'am.
So ideas on virtual meetings, sir. How do we create that kind of engagement?
It is a big problem. It is an issue. I have tried to manage it somehow. What I do is I send interesting reading materials beforehand.
Okay. लोग पढ़ते नहीं है सुदीप, कुछ नहीं पढ़ता है कोई.
Ma'am, actually, for that I take the help of the training department of the organization.
True.
Okay, and yeah, I mean 100% participation तो नहीं हो पाता है, but even if 30% भी हो जाता है तो my job is done, because then we have a very nice and lively discussion. So discussion होता है तो जो नहीं पढ़े होते हैं वो भी they also get interested and they start contributing.
Right.
That has worked to some extent, but इसका कोई रामबाण इलाज तो है नहीं.
Correct, sir. Because we were using that module. We
can
have
I add something?
Please.
Ma'am, can I add something? Jitendra here. Whenever I conduct the classroom or virtual training program, like I am in the training department of Himalaya company, so morning to evening we have a virtual training program for 2 hours for different part of the India. So whenever I conduct the training program, virtual training program for all the participants, I divided into group like A, B, C, D. 3 or 4 participants we have divided, or almost 15 to 16 people are in the one Zoom training program. So we have a different topic for everyone. Like we are taking a session on pre-call session, pre-call training program, like how to start a call. So how to make an effective sales call or productive call. So every person have to speak 1 point. I have given him, you have to tell me about 10 points. So 4 person from one group. So every one person have to tell 1 point, which should not be same to be other other participant he has said or he has used. So the engagement of this, and I am writing down on my laptop. I am showing. I'm just sharing the screen to everyone. You have written. You have spoken this. This statement is said by this person. The second statement said by this person. And what B is. So I have added their managers also. So after that, apart from the participants, what their manager contributed on that virtual training program. So I'm adding 10 plus 2 another points added by their managers. So along with their 12 statements. So you have to divide it the groups, and you have to be spoken them each and individual and a different statement. Whatever their understanding, whatever their knowledge they are, it doesn't mean. Ultimately, you are there to correct or evaluate.
Wonderful. Actually personalized it for them. So whether you have, first you have broken them bigger group into a smaller group, and then you have personalized it for them. So they're able to connect and stay connected with you and stay engaged.
Sir, ma'am, sorry to interrupt you. I have learned around 16 years of experience in training and development field. I have learned one thing. If you want to rule as a trainer, so only opt one rule. Divide and rule.
In role play we do, Jitendra. In role play we do, because inductions we have 4 days for role plays only. We do that, but rest of the days where the reading material and processes are there,
no, sometimes one of the every participants they understand ना trainer job बड़ी easy है यार, वो आए और ज्ञान देके चले गए, वो ज्ञान देके चले गए, वो chair के पास खड़े हैं, उधर ज्ञान देके चले गए. Sometimes they throw the questions you don't know actually.
Correct.
You don't know actually. So actually क्या है? So catch the question and throw your different question to them. Now you tell. So divide and rule. Being as a perfect trainer, you should know about divide and rule. Actual policy.
And I agree. I think that's a wonderful suggestion, actually. But yes, Rupesh.
Yeah, actually, sometimes I feel that in virtual training, the technology itself a challenge sometimes.
Correct.
Because yesterday I was in webinar, and for the half an hour, due to low bandwidth, I was not able to hear and see anything. So I think it's a biggest challenge for everyone.
Plays a very big role.
Even the day before yesterday, I was conducting a program, and one very naughty boy was there. I know he was listening me, and he said, "Sir, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही, sir. Sir, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही."
That's right. They are taking benefit of technology.
Sometimes they are able to listen, but they say when we ask question, they say, "Oh, ma'am, आवाज ही नहीं आ रही. Ma'am, हमारे challenge है." Then there is a chat box. Please write down over there.
Even most of the participants try to.
There, please write down over there. Chat box. Please use chat box.
So even that problem, I have a solution. So next day, I will plan my on-job training program for that particular boy. Come and meet me. I'll do the 30 calls with you. Show me what you have learned and what you want to show me.
Correct.
You got to put them at spotlight. You got to be, asking them in a. Yes, absolutely. Training ka bahut issue hai. I mean, the technology is a lot of issue, but these issues were there in our physical session also. maybe, but you know, the ability and the level up to which we can create individual breakout sessions here, we could have not done it in physical sessions. Because the flexible, you have a lot of customization. You can still personalize. The way Jitendra said, he could create his breakout session within a larger group. This flexibility, you will never have so many physical rooms, but you can have a lot of virtual rooms within one training room.
Right.
So
these things have become new routine actually, breakup rooms and all that.
Right, right.
But even then, you know, ensuring that everybody is participating is a Herculean task.
Correct.
You
that is the issue which we
switched
face.
off the camera and dozed off.
And we have to accept that reality also,
Yes.
because the challenges will be definitely there.
In fact, even in physical training, if you analyze the past trends, not more than 30% of the participants have actually contributed.
Right.
70%, even in physical training, they are just there physically present there, mentally they're somewhere else. The rule holds good in virtual training also, but yeah, it is more challenging because we are not able to gauge the things, which is visible quite clearly in a physical training.
I know, and you know what happens that I know I've been in this industry for the last 20 years. I have had, you know, very senior VPs coming into a training room, bringing their laptop, opening their laptop, and completely be oblivious of what's happening in the training room and setting the trend for the rest of the groups. At least now I have an opportunity of blocking this person, putting him into a separate, maybe a breakout session, and not letting rest of the group getting disturbed. Because you know, you will have all those kinds of behavior, because people, you know, as you rightly picked up, 30% of the people engage, and they are willing to participate and willing to you know, be, you know, contributing probably sometimes. And you have this behavior from a very senior people, so it becomes very difficult to control that behavior.
Right.
Can't even tell them anything. You just have to bear them.
I know, but they set the trend, no? They set the behavior for so many other people. Their level of influence and sphere of influence is so high, you're doomed.
It's an infectious disease.
Ma'am, in fact, I can also relate to this, what you were sharing as an example, that yes, there are senior people who come in, they just open their laptop, you know, they sit towards the end of the hall, and they'll just, you know, we will not focus on anything that you're sharing. And this actually disturbs the entire room. So, in fact, I remember I was doing one such session some 2 years back for the area managers, and that's when some regional managers and the branch managers, so they were there, and then, you know, the similar things started happening. So, but then I believe, you know, that such actions requires some courage as well. So that time, you know, I got a little vocal. I requested everybody to participate. I asked them, you know, to participate, though one person felt a little bad. He told me a little later, you know, that you should not say such thing. But then what I saw for the rest of the session, everybody was highly involved. So
true,
and that actually boosted the entire room's morale and participation. So that helped.
I know. I mean, at times, yes, you have to be, but virtual made it much easier for you. You can block the session into a...
Yeah. Better not invite such people.
So, KK Verma sir is back. He's thinking that these people will not stop. The next class will start.
Now it's a time, I think.
We better
have a
log off.
tea break in between.
Yes,
Sure,
yes.
sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. You have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Bye.
Should I end, sir, or I make you the presenter?
No, you end.
Okay.
That will solve the problem.
Okay.
Okay, madam. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.